Welcome back again to the Imaginary Gallery. It is TJ, your host. This is Trash Talk, random snippets regarding the narcissistic personality disorder, especially the covert. They're the worst. So tonight's topic is just an overview of a relationship with such a covert narcissist or other cluster B creature may look like. I've done lots of thinking about this based on many different experiences, and I think I've found a way to hopefully make it clear for you if you've ever dealt with such a person, because if you have, your brain is probably loaded with questions, loaded with wondering how this could be, but how that could be too, because of the beautiful cognitive dissonance these creatures love to inspire in their targets. I will give you the brief overview, which is actually based on many different real experiences. You meet your covert narcissist, and at this point you don't know that's what it is. And what you can picture this person as being is a person, but all the way around this person is what I call a brick wall. The brick wall is painted on the outside with various words, phrases, which mainly are the things that this person tells you. Because remember, they're in a hurry. They don't have time for you to establish a 5-year relationship with them first and then decide to maybe marry. No, in the first week they want a ring, in many cases. So they're in a rush. But because of this rush, on the outside of their wall, it's all bricks completely all the way around, and there'll be a brick that says things like, if you told him or her that your last partner was a liar, for example, you'll hear, "Oh, I never lie," and there'll be a brick with the words "I never lie" on it. And if your previous partner cheated, you can say, "Oh, I don't like to date anymore because my last one cheated," and you'll be told, "Oh, I don't cheat." And that's another brick. Another brick in the wall, Pink Floyd. But these bricks have various sayings on them, such as the ones we just mentioned, plus "I would never hurt you," or "I will always love you." And anyway, it's a facade around themselves. Well, you may find yourself interacting with such a person, with such a brick wall around them, with all these phrases that are just all perfect, like the perfect person. And what happens is, if you continue the interaction, despite hearing the claims on some of these bricks that sound totally unrealistic, but if you challenge them, you have nothing else to go on except their word of, "Oh, yes, I am pure and perfect." So, anyway, you continue with the interaction. Well, eventually what will happen is, let's just go to the example I gave. "I would never lie to you." Well, then, a week or 2, 3 later, something comes up that when it happens, you don't think it sounds quite right and think maybe something's fishy about it, and possibly it is not true. So you may say, "Hey, I don't think this is true. Are you sure this is what really happened?" And the person will be like, "Yes, it is true. Yes, it is." Well, what happens it's inevitable, but some piece of evidence or some piece of something pops up which indicates your intuition was spot on when you suspected something fishy. And of course, you were attempted to be pacified with, oh no, nothing's going on wrong. Well, what ends up happening is, the way I see it is, remember, the brick wall is wrapped around this person all the way around. Some piece of evidence shows up that actually indicates it was a fabricated story. Well, you probably, if you're dealing with such a person and you were suspicious of such a person, you're going to feel like vindicated, like, I knew it. See, why did you lie and say this bad thing didn't happen? Well, what's going to happen is, I see this as one of the bricks on that wall fell out. So the lie represents the brick falling out. So when that brick falls out, you happen to look in the hole it left, and maybe you see some scales. But that's it. So your brain is also taking this information in, and our brains are like computers with file cabinets. So you got a special file for this person, and in goes the lie that you discovered. However, this same person puts that brick right back in that hole and covers it up that says, I never lie. And if you say, why did you lie? You'll get some kind of retarded answer, which will be something like, I don't lie. I just lied about that because, insert retarded excuse here. So that's its way of cleaning up the mess. Swear it never lies, you catch it in the lie, well, oh, I don't lie, but I did then because of, and then brick goes back in place. So as far as this narcissistic covert witch is concerned, it saved face. Time passes, and of course the love bombing continues, so you kind of feel awkward still thinking about that particular brick that fell, because if you try to bring it up and like, wait a second, I still can't understand why you made such a big deal about this, and then when the brick fell, you will get the same type of ridiculous, retarded type response or excuse of, I told you, I don't ever lie, but I did then because, and again, no reason to even give the phony excuses, because I lied then is all you need to know, not the reasons why. So you keep on going on, which is probably a mistake at this point, but there's so many benefits involved that you don't want to think about it, so you continue with it. Well, then down the road, another brick falls out of something else, such as, I'm not interested in anyone else but you, is what that brick says. And then you happen to stumble upon a friend of yours that mentions that his or her friend is dating your brick wall, and the brick falls to the floor. And when this happens, you look in that little hole it leaves, and maybe you see horns, but you can't be sure. But you previously saw scales. Now you're seeing horns, but you're not quite sure because it's pretty quick, because it's not long before this creature shoves that brick right back in with some spackling and says, oh no, I only did that because of, and puts it back in. Well, this pattern seems to continue when you're dealing with such a personality disordered, blessed monster. So hopefully by now you're starting to get the picture, because this same pattern will continue, where before you know it, 10, 20, maybe more bricks have fallen out. You've looked in the hole it left, and you've seen scales, horns, fire breathing, who knows, you see all kinds of little snippets, but pretty soon a pattern starts to emerge as far as the brick that falls out this time is very similar to, or if the same, it could be the same as the previous few bricks that fell that were some kind of claim that obviously was not true. And what happens with this person when you address this, same thing. I told you I only did this time because of whatever. And this creature doesn't realize that each time the brick falls, you're seeing another piece of the monster that's inside there, because the tail, the scales, the horns, the fire breath, it's like you're starting to see like a different creature, because if it was up to the creature, it's perfect. It never lies. It's always loyal. It's always friendly, and that's the story it tells, and that's what's printed on the outside of the bricks. But you can't help but notice now it's been 10 times that you've caught 10 different lies, let's say. And that brick says, I never lie, and it's getting loose. He has to keep, or she has to keep putting spackling on it to keep it in there because it keeps falling out. And every time there's a stupid, retarded excuse. Well, eventually, over time, they've got all these myths surrounding themselves about how perfect, basically, he or she is. Yet, you can't help but notice the 20 or 30 bricks that have fallen that have been replaced that you happen to catch a glimpse inside, and you're starting to notice a demon, a devil, a monster, hidden behind the false exterior smiling face of, I would never do anything to hurt you. And you start to use your brain. And these people, these covert narcissistic cluster B blank faces, they do not want their target to use their own brain and think independently. They want you to buy their fictitious story about how perfect they are, and the moment you start thinking independently, downhill. Because by this point, you have had enough time to compile your own little brain file of, okay, this person I know has said they would never do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but I've got 30 examples of where the person did do exactly that. So you are kind of like getting sick of hearing this person with these fake advertisements that they never do this, they never do that, and like in my case, I was like, you need to find a different way to describe yourself because you're way off. And of course that didn't do any good, but that was my approach to think, you're trying too hard to be something you're not. You claim you never lie, and if you bring these up, you always say, because you know they're saying it every day, it's on the brick wall, you say you never lie, but do you realize you lie? Here's how, and you list the 10 things that you found, or 20 things, and guess what you'll be told? More of the same retardedness. Oh, I already told you why I lied about this. You don't listen. So they become victim and make you the aggressor, which is retarded in itself. But what ends up happening, which is inevitable, is after time passes and you catch this, and this, your little file in your brain is like getting expanded and bigger because you're having to like rewrite what you're hearing. And many times it's tempting to say, look, you always talk about you're always loyal and never dishonest. Well, I don't think that's true. I think you're dishonest. I am not, it'll say. And then you go through your list of all your things. Well, you told me this, but I found out that. You said you weren't married, but you were. You said you had no kids, but you got 6. And so on. And each time you do this, guess what happens? That love bomber from the past that used to be concerned for every need you had or any concern you were worried about, all of a sudden has switched gears and is not there to help you at all by attacking what you're saying. So here you are, coming to your own conclusions that there's a dragon monster underneath this brick wall who's pretending to be a saint angel, and you just don't like the inconsistency of it because if you're dealing with, let's say, a liar criminal, you'd rather have conversations with the liar criminal that revolve around its interest in lying and being a criminal. But guess what happens? When you say, well, you've got to be a criminal, you did rob that bank, now what was going through your head when you did it? You'll be, I don't do that anymore. I just did that because of this. So it's like off limits. Anything personal, anything that involves self-reflection is off limits because they don't have any self-reflection skills. But what happens over time is you have seen so many bricks fall, you've seen behind the brick wall so many times, you've got enough information now that you can actually logically and intelligently say, look, drop this fictitious act, being Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect, and then you can go through your list and say, a perfect person doesn't do this. A perfect person. And you're just desperately trying to relate on an equality level, which we've already established does not exist with these people. But it's like you're giving way more evidence than you need to prove your point, and it's greeted with the same brick wall response where you start to see this person as pathetic. It's like this monster dragon hidden behind this brick wall is going to lose their wall pretty soon because the bricks keep falling out and it's going to collapse. But this creature still wants to maintain this fictitious non-dragon entity for you. Well, the main problem with these types of people, I've learned, is you can't help but gather the evidence as the time passes that tells a completely different story from the fake story you're fed and given, that it's a perfect person in all ways and it doesn't do anything wrong, and then when you point out anything wrong, it's because by now you've got the huge file full of all this contradictory information. So you may again try to bring up the subject, like, you know, you always say that you're so loyal, but I still can't get over the fact that you had done this and this and this. And before you can even finish your sentence, you'll get some rage face, some kind of evil reaction of, you don't listen to anything I say, which basically means I made up a fake retarded excuse for that one, and you had a point, but I'm not going to tell you you had a point because I have to win. I wish you'd stop saying this, is really what they're saying. But of course, they won't say that to your face. But like in my cases, with a few of these creatures, I would like compile all of the real information that completely contradicted the false information, and I was still like pushing. I don't know why. I guess I'm a realistic type person, and if I'm hanging out with a criminal every day and it claims it's against crime, I'd rather hear crime tales than that BS, because I'm being set up if it says it's not a crime person, and I say, yes, you are, because you stole this, because you beat this up, and because you murdered this, and they're going to pull their same stunt of, oh, you keep bringing those things up. Those were only because of la la la. And it's like, how many things do you have to realize your brick wall is useless? Because there comes a time when you've seen so much, no excuse is going to take it away. But these retarded monsters seem to think that they can just keep telling their retarded stories and putting those bricks back in, and you can't help but start to come to your own conclusions. So you may take things further in your conversations, like, yeah, you always make such a big deal about how honest you are, but I can count 30 lies now, so you know what I think? I think you're a fake person who pretends to be honest, but really you're the biggest liar in the world. And guess what? Don't you insult me. Don't you put me down so you think you're perfect. La, la, la. And again, that's not a normal response, because you, again, are telling facts, looking to check them out, and if it was a non-abusive person, you would be greeted with, oh dear, that is right, I did do that. Oh no, oh, I've got to work on that. No, never happens with these types of people. That's a dream conversation you'll never have. But usually this phase occurs after the love bombing idealization, and when you start to uncover clues, that is when the devaluation of you begins, because you're getting to be inconvenient. You're noticing things on your own. You're coming to your own conclusions, all of which is off limits to these monsters. They want you to take what they say and believe it, period, and not question anything. So what ends up happening is you've got such a big file, and because you have so much cognitive dissonance, which we've covered in other videos, but basically the human brain cannot have two opposing ideas at the same time of, for example, this is a really nice person who's great, and this is a really evil person who's evil. Well, you can't have those two thoughts together in your head and live any kind of harmonious life, because they're opposing, because they contradict one another. Well, happens in real life too when some creature walks across the street that has like a big chest like a lady, but it's got a man's face. But then it's got a woman's legs, but then there's a bulge in the front of its pants. So people will look at that like, what is that? They've got to find a way to classify it. And if they can't classify it, they're going to be driven crazy by it. Well, same thing goes when you're dating this fool who's got the brick that says, I'll always be honest to you. And then you uncover 10 lies. Well, you can't balance those two thoughts. It's like you never lie and you're always lying. It doesn't work. Well, eventually this is when you start to be devalued because you're onto it. You're onto him or her. You're seeing it for what it really is. You've seen that dragon scale and those tails and that fire breathing, and you finally get to the point where you're confident enough with like, you know what? I think you're an evil, reptilian, shape-shifting dragon behind that fake brick wall that you're wearing. And of course, when you're pointing out your realistic information, you will be accused of being a abusive person. And then this gives this monster another chance to be the victim. And of course, it probably runs to its flying monkeys and says, I don't know what's gotten into him. He keeps telling me these things and criticizing me for this and da 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 da. And of course, fails to mention that, yeah, I lied to him about all these things, and he's starting to figure it out, and now he's calling me out. No, you won't hear that. You'll hear, he's just criticizing me. Fake, fake, fake. But you then eventually become a nag because you have uncovered so much trash, and you're trying to make it all make sense, and you'd love to have the cooperation of the person who's generating this trash, but guess what? It's not there. It's excused away. It's lied away. It's turned around onto you. What about when you did la la la? And it's like, we're not talking about me, person. But anyway, so this is when your inquiries become too much for the covert narcissist who loves to be your victim and will just simply tell you that you think you're perfect because you're criticizing. And of course, the reality is you're trying to make sense of a nonsensical situation. But of course, that level of intelligence either doesn't exist among these monsters or it's just conveniently overlooked. But hopefully this helps you with dealing with any experience you may have had or you are having, because they do this type of thing. They don't understand that once the brick falls and you see the piece of the dragon, you've seen the piece of the dragon. So they can shove the brick back in and seal it back, but the dragon was still seen. And of course they'll say, there's no dragon. You're imagining things. Oh, gaslighting, because they remember one of their big rules is never admit that you're playing a game. Well, there you go. So you can sit there for hours demanding this person tell you about their game, but guess what? There is no game. Fake. I think that's enough for the evening. Be careful. Have a great night.
Fine. No, I didn't lie to you. It's just that time of the month for me. and you're going to have to accept it. I never lied to you, as you know. And I'm tired of you accusing me of lying. Your sister, your brother, even your father, they're all lying. They're out to get me because they're jealous of us. They don't want us to be happy because they are miserable. One day you'll learn this. Until then, I told you I'm through. Bye. Bye-bye. Say bye-bye to this too.
I know. When I first met you, I swore that you were the only one that I would let near my private parts. And I know you hadn't touched him yet, and I'd become pregnant. Well, my plan was to pin that on you, but because you were so polite and wouldn't even go that far, now I am forced to have to chase another guy for alimony. Thanks a lot. But I meant what I said when I told you I loved you. I hope you understand.
Don't behave, I said no. Here's something bad and I come up and go, no. You try to keep me toes behave, I said no. Here's something bad and I come up and go, no.